And for the first time, my name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I'm compelled to present before an awakening set-apart nation. To those who are drawn by the Almighty Creator, He who is the beginning and the end, He who is also known as the Father of lights and a consuming fire, who draws us to His word so that we're able to communicate with Him, and His word comes in the name of Yahusha. No Trinity. Yahusha represents us acknowledging His word, the Almighty Yahuah's word that came before us. It's from the virgin, before the virgin birth, to the virgin birth, to Him walking among us, to the death, sacrifice, and resurrection, to the Almighty Father sending His Spirit in Yahusha's name. For communication purposes, my brothers and sisters, we say the name Yahusha to represent, we acknowledge that Yahuah sent His word to bring life to us. And it is through that atoning blood of His word, that atoning blood of the Mashiach Yahusha, that we receive salvation, that we become His and recognize that we are saved by the blood of the Lamb. We are made alive by the quickening of the word of Yahuah. And His set-apart spirit dwells with us, in us, through us, one towards another, indirectly. Before I continue on in this segment, I want to say this. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of the owners, managers, shareholders, and or sponsors of this media platform. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, if you are a husband, if you are a wife, if you are thinking about getting married, if you are an examiner, one being used by the Almighty Father to execute judgment, as judgment begins at the house of Yahuah. If you are a brother and sister, just identifying the roles of different individuals in this set-apart family, then this message will shed some light on some things that are necessary for the husband and the wife, or wives, to know. And I'm saying this in the beginning. Although I have one wife, there are those who have no wife, and there are those who have multiple wives. It is not for us to push our individual convictions on others. The Western Hemisphere, the Western culture has disdained having multiple wives. Now, the scripture does not mention anything about having multiple husbands as being set apart, but having more than one wife is acceptable. It is ironic that those among us, and I believe it's women that just selfish, saying, I'm not sharing my man with no one. If that's your conviction, that should be honored. But all women do not feel the same. Keep in mind, Yashar'al, we are at a time, if we say we believe the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, let us believe and accept all the instructions and these set-apart examples that go before us. Just because we have a conviction, just like one might say, I'll never marry. Yahusha is my husband. That may be their conviction because that might be the assigned task of that member in this set-apart nation. It's a contradiction to say you believe the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, but you don't believe in polygyny. When Yashar'al alone, the 12 tribes alone are a result of a polygynous marriage. So Yashar'al, either you believe the scriptures or you don't. The scriptures tell us that Yahuah changes not. So to say, well, that was back then and we don't need it now. I've heard some people say, well, we don't need to have polygynous marriage now. The nation has multiplied. Who are we to put a cap on how large the nation shall multiply? My brothers and sisters, this message is to bring some light on this word we know as husband, on this word we know as wife. I will share with you an experience I have, but before I get into it, I will present some scriptures to reflect on as it relates to a husband and a wife. Let us lean into the beginning, my brothers and sisters. Genesis chapter 2, verses 22 to 25. For it reads, for the rear which Yahuah, the Almighty One, and keep in mind, if you're tuning in for the first time, whenever I see Elohim, that's plural for mighty ones. Yahuah is one. My brothers and sisters, no Trinity, he's one. So I will say the Almighty One wherever I see the word Elohim. With that said, let me read again. In the rear which Yahuah, the Almighty One, had taken from man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman, because she was taken out of man. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, and the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed. My brothers and sisters, we will understand that how man and woman became one flesh, how the first demonstration of husband and wife was created by the Almighty Father. That order was created by the Almighty Father. So often we read something and come into the knowledge and we forget it was something that began with the Almighty Father. Just a side note, just like Shabbat. When reading Genesis about Shabbat, they forget it's Yahuah that's creating everything, and that Yahuah is light, and that he's the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. They forget that. They right away start with evening, morning, and day, and they forget who created it. They forget in Revelation, or they are unlearned, that in Revelation say it will be no need of the sun or the moon, for we will have the brilliance of Yahuah. And since he never changed, he wasn't the light in the beginning, shut off, and then he shut back on in Revelation. He has always been the light. Now, why am I going off on this? Because people tend to forget who things began with, and to ignore that creates misunderstanding. And Shabbat is a critical thing for this final Exodus and for these end times. But anyway, back to the matter of wife, husband, wife, and lesson. Come with me to Isaiah 54, 5 through 7. Isaiah 54, 5 through 7. It says, for your maker is your husband. Yahuah of hosts is his name. And the set apart one of Yashar'al is your redeemer. He is called the Almighty One of all the earth. For Yahuah has called you like a woman forsaken and grievous in spirit, like a wife of youth when you were refused, declares your Almighty One. For a little while I have forsaken you, but with great compassion I shall gather you. Now remember, Yahuah changes not. So things of beginning can also be repeated, my brothers and sisters. Now I want you to come with me, and I want you to understand. Let me go back. Notice how it says in Isaiah 54, 5, for your maker is your husband. Yahuah of hosts is his name. The set apart one of Yashar'al is your redeemer. There are those among us who miss out and leave out critical scriptures that let us know that our first husband and commitment is to Yahuah. And we can only have that through the blood of the Lamb, Yahusha, his word. For following his word, his living words is actual Torah. Some will think Torah is the 5 books of Moses. Some will say the Torah is the Old Testament altogether. Torah means instructions. So let's get that correct, my brothers and sisters. Now, it would be wise to understand the full dynamics in a marriage. I strongly encourage you to consider the life in these words as I read them. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16 says, unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception in sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. There's an order of service, my brothers and sisters, and there are camps and communities who will take this to mean just rule over thee, not asking themselves, how do a husband learn to rule over his wife? I say the husband should go to the husband of all mankind, which is Yahuwah. The husband should go to the Almighty Father in the name of Yahusha, in the name of his word, and learn what true things, what set apart actions he must have in order to rule over his wife. It doesn't mean just blanket rule, blind rule, just do whatever the husband says. It is wicked to think that the Almighty Father will say that we are temples, that we are vessels of his, both man and women, but then think that he will not use a woman to speak to you, to us, to the husband. So don't get it mixed up, my brothers and sisters, because some will take this scripture and just say the husband's supposed to rule, you're supposed to do whatever he says, call him Lord and all this misaligned instruction, and it is wicked. Just as I said in the beginning of this message, if you're thinking about getting married, if you are already married, or if you are one who is called to examine and render judgment, confirmation and reaffirmation to the rudiments of a husband and wife. In other words, you're a witness. Do you witness that husband doing what he's supposed to do according to the guidance of Yahuwah? Do you witness the wife doing what she's supposed to do according to the guidance of Yahuwah? Now come with me to 1 Corinthians 7:3-6. For these are important, oftentimes missed or neglected. It says, let the husband render to his wife what is her due, and likewise also the wife to her husband. That what is due is what is said, directed, and instructed by the Almighty Father. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Now hear this second part. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. What is that saying? It's giving license for iron to sharpen iron, for husband and wife to be one. Remember, any house divided against itself can't stand. So to be one, it requires actions of iron sharpening iron. Why? Because our flesh will war against the spirit, and therefore the spirit of Yahuwah will work in us, one towards another. We must understand these dynamics and come away from the unlearned, the belligerent, the wicked, who spew out a misaligned definition of a relationship between a husband and a wife, or wives. It says, do not deprive one another except with agreement for a time, to give yourself to fasting and prayer, and come together again so that Satan does not try you because of your lack of self-control. And I say this is a concession, not a command. So some will say, Symmanayah, I don't know what he's talking about. This wasn't a command, this was a concession. Whether you say concession or a command, it's a direction, it's instruction, it's wise instruction. Remember, the scriptures have been tampered with. Remember also that our comprehension and understanding, our reading and understanding, our literacy skills may differ. So some will say because it said concession, they can do what they want to their wives. This is not true. It is a wicked position if someone took it to mean that he didn't really order this. It was a concession said by Shalum. My brothers and sisters, set apart relationships require us to understand the power of the blood of the Lamb Yahusha. Why? We will stumble, we will fall, we will make missteps, both husband and wife. So it is important, Yashar'al, for us to know that it is through the blood of the Lamb that we can seek forgiveness, that we can be cleansed, that our robes can become white as snow, being washed by the blood of the Lamb, that our actions going forward can be renewed, our life can be renewed day by day by the power of the Spirit of the Almighty Father who comes to us in Yahusha's name. So many people fail to understand the dynamics of that relationship. This relationship of husband and wife, Yahuah being the ultimate husband, his word, him preparing us as the bride for his word, Yahusha. We must understand that the natural relationship between man and wife, the physical that we see, is a demonstration for us to practice in growing in our relationship with the Almighty Father. How many husbands and wives know this? That practice is a practice that requires forgiveness. That practice is a practice that requires focusing forward and growing together in maturity and set apartness and demonstrating before the body what marriage is about. Let me continue. It is important to be mindful of these words, O Yashar'al. Come with me, my brother, my sister, and my family, and I am going to tell you about an experience in a moment. Bear with me. I want to set the emphasis, the stage regarding a wife and a husband. Ephesians 5:22 through 33 reads this. Ephesians 5:22 through 33 reads, wives, subject yourselves to your own husband as to the master. As to the master Yahusha instructs the wife how she is to submit before her husband. Just as we will discover, and as I mentioned, the husband will provide ministry, leadership, and serve his wife. It says, because the husband is the head of the wife. Notice that, the head. As also the Messiah is head of the assembly. He is savior of the body. So just as Messiah uses us, he allows us to grow in relationship with him, we should, as husbands, govern our wives in such a way that allows her to do where she is instructed by the Spirit of Yahusha, to work with a husband who has been assigned that position, given that position by the Almighty Father. It said, but as the assembly is subject to Messiah, so also let the wives be to their own husbands in every respect. Remember I talked about literacy skills? One can say, let's talk about wives, meaning polygyny is okay. Another one is talking about the different wives, man having his own wife. Don't let our comprehension skill dictate a singular definition for something that you know not. Seek to discern, O Yashar'al. Again, remember the 12 tribes of Yashar'al is a result of polygynous marriage. 25th verse, I'm in 5, Ephesians 5. I'm at 25, and I'll continue and just read all the way through. Husband, love your wives as Messiah also did love the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, in order to present it to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or in any of this sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. In this way, husbands are to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Now think about it. If you're a husband, if you have been seduced into believing that you're supposed to dictate to your wife, treat her any kind of way, order her around, as her Lord, quote unquote. Think about that. Are you treating your wife the way you want Yahusha to treat you? Are you reflecting your relationship with Yahusha, with the Almighty Father? Are you reflecting on it and walking in obedience and treating your wife as you want to be treated? It says, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but feeds and cherishes it, as also the master does the assembly, because we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. The two shall walk together in unity, my brothers and sisters. And we must recognize both of us are vessels of the Almighty Father, both of us as set-apart children of Yahuah, as set-apart children of Yahuah, have an obligation to yield to the Spirit of Yahuah as he works through us one towards another, making us stronger as one flesh. It says this secret is great. See, because it's the Almighty Father knew some will get it mistakenly wrong. Some will get it incorrectly. So he's saying it's a secret and that it's great. Well, who is great? No one is greater than Yahuah. So we must go to him to understand the secret. It said, but I speak concerning Messiah and the assembly, letting us know this is all concerning the Messiah and the assembly. However, you too, everyone, let each one love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she fears her husband. She's fearing her husband. She's referencing her husband, fearing her husband, fearing the Yahusha in him, the Spirit of Yahuah within him. Because a true relationship, a true marriage, as institutionalized or presented naturally or spiritually, is something that was and designed by the Almighty Father Yahuah. So this is what she should be fearing: the institution, the instructions, the spiritual relationship that has been designed by the Almighty Father. My brothers and sisters, I want to share an experience that I encountered during a time of reflection and prayer. So I'm going to get into that story because I think it is important for us to see some real examples, or at the very least hear of some real examples. And I want you to pray that the Spirit of Yahusha open your heart and your minds to discern what I'm saying and why these words are important. Allow me to present some words that I started to use to call this post, Yashar'al. I started to say, jacked up and cleaned up. Jacked up and cleaned up. Or I was reflecting. Remember I said I was reflecting on prayer. It was a reflection time on an experience that occurred. So then I started to call this beat up and cleaned up. Beat up and cleaned up. And I was compelled, my brothers, my sisters, then I was compelled to just say husband, wife, lesson. With that said, let's move on. Consider these words about love, and I'm going to get into that experience, my brothers and sisters. I know it seems like we're so impatient these days, like hurry up and get to the point. To those who listen prayerfully and carefully, let the matter conclude if it's giving you something that is of importance. You're the judge, my brothers and sisters. With that said, let me read this portion regarding love. 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 13 reads, if I speak with the tongues of men and of messengers, but do not have love, I have become as a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. Are our husbands or our wives? Do we really have love? To have it, we must continuously get to know the Almighty Father to demonstrate the love that he demonstrates to us. and instruct us on demonstrating to one another. I have been married nearly 38 years, my brothers and sisters. 38 years. And I say hallelujah. It has been and it is a learning experience. And I praise the Almighty Father Yahuah for such a time that I have had and will have. Let me continue. 13:2. And if I prophesy and know all secrets and knowledge, and I have all belief, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am none at all. And if I give out all my possessions to feed the poor, if I give my body to be burned, but do not have love, I am not profited at all. Love is patience. It's kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Is not puffed up. Does not behave indecently. Does not seek its own. Is not provoked. Reckons not the evil. Does not rejoice over the unrighteous, but rejoice in truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Love never fails, and whether there be prophecy, they shall be inactive, or tongues, they shall cease, or knowledge, it shall be inactive. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I did away with childish matters. For now we see in the mirror dimly. But then face to face, now I know in part, but then I shall know as I also have been known. And now belief, expectation, love remain. These three, but the greatest of these is love. My brothers and sisters, I want to go back to 13:4 through 7. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Is not puffed up. Does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoice in truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, so many husbands don't realize when it comes to raising a family, raising your children, that sometimes the wife is more sensitive to the needs of the child than the husband. Sometimes the husbands, I have witnessed husbands acting belligerent, acting over dominant, stepping outside their boundaries of set apart leadership and demonstrating actions that the wife do not want the children to see or witness. Case in point, there's one community pastor that I personally believe is an alcoholic. He's always imbibing. Well, I won't say always. He has a routine habit of drinking strong drink and other alcoholic beverages. And he cursed like a sieve. And he tried to say it's okay. That's just the Western culture that's saying it's cursing. I don't mention names, but those of you who know who I'm talking about, you'll know. And he's not alone. There are others slinging profanity around like it's nobody's business, drinking alcohol and doing other things that are unseemly to set apartness. And I think the wife don't want their children to see that. Do the husband yield, acknowledge that the wife might be a little bit more discerning than the husband? Some of these do not care because they believe their job is to rule. Some of these individuals just put forth baggage boastfully and erroneously. Beware of such, my brothers and sisters. Let me take you to this. Matthew 12:25, and Yahusha knew their thoughts and said to them, every reign divided against itself is laid waste, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. So it's important, Yashar'al, for us to understand all the things that are required to be in unity. Otherwise, these marriages will not last. They will not stand. And we see high divorce rates, at least in the Western Hemisphere. I want to read Hebrews 11:1, because I spoke of Yahusha knowing their thoughts. That's discernment. And when he revealed to us their thoughts or one another's thoughts, this helps us to get past and through any lies or excuses that someone would try to present, that a husband would try to present, or that a wife would try to present. Discernment, when Yahusha reveals, help keep in check the love that has been and to be established between a husband and a wife. Hebrews 11:1 said, "In belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen." You see, discernment oftentimes, we don't see it or want to admit that we see Yahusha revealing the thoughts of one another or others. But through belief, we will grow to understand the full dynamics of discernment beyond the academic definition that man puts forth. I want to drop down to the 6th verse of Hebrews 11 chapter. It says, but without belief, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to the Almighty One has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. It said, but without belief, it's impossible to please him. If we don't believe in what we say, my brothers and sisters, we'll find ourselves stumbling, not recognizing what and how to govern ourselves as a husband or a wife. Come with me, my brothers and sisters. There are those who will point to a scripture and not know the full dynamics of relationship with the Almighty Father. And I want to read a couple of things that may, if you look at just the text, you may think these things are contradictory. But if you search out the life in them, in the spirit of what the Almighty Father is saying, then you will understand these two passages that I'm about to read. Malachi 2:15 and 16. For it reads this, my brothers, my sisters. And did he not make one? And he had the remnant of the Spirit. And what is the one alone? He seeks a seed of the Almighty One. So you shall guard your spirit and let none act treacherously against the wife of his youth. For I hate divorce. Notice that he said, so that let none act treacherously against the wife. See, there are things that can happen sometimes that bring about divorce. Notice it follows up, I hate divorce, said Yahuwah, the Almighty One of Yashar'al. And the one who covers his garments with cruelty, said Yahuwah of hosts. So you shall guard your spirit and do not act treacherously. Walk in the spirit and leading the wife or wives. Again, do not reject all the tenets of nation building. And in these end times, we will understand what that means. Let me continue. Yashar'al. Deuteronomy 24:1-4 says this. When a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be, if she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found a matter of uncoveredness in her, and he shall write her a certificate of divorce and put it in her hand and send her out of his house. And if she left his house and went and became another man's wife, and the latter husband shall hate her and write her a certificate of divorce and put in her hand and send her out of the house, and when the latter husband dies, who took her to be with his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her back to be his wife after she had been defiled, for that would be an abomination before Yahuwah. And do not bring sin on the land which Yahuwah, your Almighty One, is giving you as an inheritance. You see, my brothers and sisters, sometimes a person will realize what they did wrong and they genuinely want to come back. But the testimony will be that they cannot come back. They should have given thought in the first place before defiling the marriage. The testimony should be that the husband understand that he must be severe when it comes to following the orders of the Almighty Father. But keep in mind, when it's talking about divorce here, it's talking about something treacherously happened, something wrong and wicked occurred. So though the Almighty Father hates divorce, the exception, and it doesn't mean that he likes it, he allows divorce for the purposes of building his set apart sovereignty and kingdom. Let me continue, my brother, my sister, my family. Now let me move towards my experience that I encountered. My wife and I, we was in Home Depot purchasing some things. And I say to my wife a lot of times, often, learn to follow my lead. For as end times become critical, it's going to be important for you to follow my lead. As your husband, I am your appointed lead, your natural lead. And I say that often. As I instruct her, as I minister to her, as I interact with her. So we in Home Depot, remember this, Yashar'al. A leader is actually also a servant, a minister. And keep that thought in mind. So we go into Home Depot and my wife desired some garden gloves. Now I had purchased some gloves, we had purchased some gloves a while back in Home Depot. And I vividly remember where that location was in the store. So I told my wife, come on, let's go. I know where they're at. So as we was walking, she turned around, she said, I think we should go to the garden section. And I said, no, you need to learn how to follow my lead. Why you keep going to go the opposite that I'm saying? So I said, come on. So we kept walking. And she turned the second time. I believe it's even possible she turned the third time. And I believe Yahusha allowed me to discern the spirit of saying, okay, I'm going to follow your lead. You always talked about that. So we got to the section with the gloves that I remembered. But these were really plumber's gloves. They were rubber gloves, leather gloves, and different other materials that I could use as a garden glove. But there weren't any specific garden gloves there. And I had told my wife when we was on our way to that section, they wouldn't put the gloves outside in the garden section because they'll just rot. They'll dry out. But we didn't see the gloves that she wanted. So then I said, well, let's ask someone. So I asked an employee of Home Depot, where are the garden gloves? And she said, oh, they're in the garden section. In the cabinet. In the garden, in a green cabinet in the garden section. I can hear my wife's voice, not audibly, but spiritually saying, I told you, but you always want me to follow your lead. So let's go to the garden section. So we went to the garden section, and in the cabinet, there were gloves that she wanted. Now notice I said they wouldn't have them in the garden section because they were rotted out. So I felt righteously justified because they weren't out in the open. Now all this is going on in my experience. We went to the garden section, got the gloves. I think I did tell my wife, well, maybe you were, no, I don't know if I said maybe or you were right. I'm not sure. But I never said forgive me. I never said I misled you. I never said I was wrong, to the point of strong conviction, not to the conviction I had that I kept when I was saying follow my lead. So we went home the rest of the night and I went to sleep. And I woke up. My spirit was quickened. And I believe the spirit of Yahusha was saying, you need to ask your wife for forgiveness. You need to apologize. You need to explain to her what happened. You always saying follow your lead. But at times, because the flesh war against the spirit, you stumble. You need to make sure that your lead is with the wisdom of him. And I said, you're right. He said, least mistakes like that happen. Least mistakes happen in the future. Because I used to say, if you don't follow my lead, what if something happened during these end times and the ground opened up, and because you didn't follow my lead, you succumb to an earthquake, tsunami, destruction of in some way, shape, or form. Well, by me misleading my wife, I would have misled her right into destruction. So I take these matters serious, my brothers and sisters. So I'm praying. And so the enemy came in and said, no, you did what was right. You're going to make mistakes, but don't tell her, because then she's going to say, well, see, she's going to use those words against you whenever you say, follow my lead. Now comes the beat up, the jacked up. The enemy was saying, don't tell her. I give her fuel. Don't say anything about that. You were wrong. Yeah, you were wrong. Then also went through my mind is, I'm not going to say to anyone, follow my lead ever again. I do not want to be one who have misled a brother or a sister. Well, though we don't want to be one that do that, keep in mind, if we don't constantly remember the flesh war against the spirit, if we don't constantly understand what it means to pray without ceasing, to walk in wisdom towards one another, mistakes will happen. So when it comes to following the lead of the husband must be seeking to pray to understand the lead from the spirit of the Almighty Father. So the enemy was saying, don't tell her. Just let it pass. Move forward. Press forward. Don't let the left hand know the right hand. All kinds of things he was throwing at me saying, well, you're going to lose control. And while I was getting beat up, I felt a little depressed. I was like he was trying to take me into depression, saying, see, I've been saying that all along. And the spirit of Yahusha said, rise up, my son, and understand my instructions. The flesh war against the spirit, and seeking forgiveness, and identifying and discerning what is wrong. My blood was shed to bring about forgiveness, to bring about renewal and strength. Rise up, my son, and ask my daughter, your wife, for forgiveness at the appropriate time. Keep in mind, she was asleep. I'm having this in my prayer time, in my reflection time. And so I went from being jacked up and beat up by thinking of all the reasons not to tell her, not to talk about it, to getting under the blood of the Lamb, fulfilling, comforted by his encounter, his words. Let me know he forgive the mistake. He told us that we will stumble. He told me that the flesh war against the spirit, but he also told me about the power of his blood, the power and might of being renewed by his set-apart spirit. So what I did, my brothers and sisters, that morning when my wife woke up, I asked her forgiveness. I apologized. I told her what I experienced in my reflection and prayer time while she was asleep. And I also began that day with being more prayerful in my actions of leadership as her husband. Yashar'al, it would be wise to understand the true meaning of being humbled. Being humbled means to yield to what is right, having the strength to put your flesh in check so that the spirit may be pronounced with the strength and power of set-apartness. That's what being humbled, putting that flesh in check. And I believe that's what I did by letting my wife know her leader, her husband, was wrong and had misstepped. We will understand that makes us stronger. And as I stated earlier, we have had encounters where I have apologized and asked for forgiveness, as have she. But today, this day, O Yashar'al, I was compelled to present this message to you, my brothers and sisters. For in these last days, for such a time as this, we will grow to know the full dynamics of what's expected of a husband, of a wife. we will understand that our existence goes beyond physically being married. Even when it comes to a polygamous marriage, it goes beyond that. Search the scriptures, for they tell us that after the resurrection, we do not give in marriage or have marriage. Not as we know it, O Yashar'al. We will be with the Mashiach forever into everlasting life. And that life will be where there will be a new heaven and a new earth as we know it, O Yashar'al. My brothers and sisters, I went from referring on my own experience. See, in other words, I was looking back with those gloves when I bought them before. I was looking in the past. I wasn't listening tentatively to my wife, nor testing that she could be correct in the way that would have saved some time and saved me from making a mistake. So sometimes we may be looking at our past experience and using that to be strong on our current experience without examining it fully. So I say, O Yashar'al, let's not get so caught up on the past experience, on what happened yesterday, unless we can examine it and see, is it applicable to today? This relationship is fluid and ongoing. With each day is a new breath, O Yashar'al. Let us learn to understand that. Let us walk in the wisdom that is given us, O Yashar'al. For the sake of time, my brothers and sisters, let me present that experience completely. You probably say, well, I thought you said it from beginning to end. What completes it is the lesson that I learned, the dynamics, the details that I learned, how that can help me to be even a better husband. And it may help someone else. And it may help someone who believe they're moving into marriage understand the complete story. Could there even be more things to be said about it? Sure it could, O Yashar'al. When Yahusha talks about endless water, that means there's instruction that can endlessly be given towards the matter. We sometimes forget that. Come with me, Yashar'al, as I continue. My brother, my sister, my family, I want you to come and realize that it is hard work that is required. It is hard work, continuous prayer that is necessary in a marriage. As end times ramp up, we will need to learn the value of time is critical. How we treat one another is critical. How we lead or follow will require us to be able to recognize the importance of time more so than what we have in the past. Let me present these words to you, O Yashar'al, for I believe they are relevant to this post. Colossians 4:5 says, walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. We neglect time, my brothers and sisters, even the time we have with our wife or the wife have with her husband. We have taken time for granted. So instead of spending a lot of time arguing, sometimes we consume too much time arguing, debating, grumbling with one another when we are in disagreement, when we need to learn how to iron that wrinkle out, how to smooth things over in a set-apart way, because time is too critical to waste arguing, coming out attitudes, walking away from each other bitter or grumbled. Have my wife and I ever had that experience? Sure we have. But I would believe that the testimony of 38 years, nearly 38 years, shows that we have learned some things of wisdom through the power of the Almighty Father to remain in love and then together, never separated. 1 Thessalonians, I want to read this, chapter 5, verse 16 through 22. For it reads, rejoice always. Listen to these next words, my brothers and sisters. Pray without ceasing. In all circumstances, give thanks, for this is the desire of the Almighty One in Messiah Yahusha for you. Do not quench the spirit. Do not despise prophecies. Prove them all. Hold fast what is good. Keep back from every form of wickedness. You hear these words, my brothers and sisters? We have some responsibilities. There are obligations that each of us have, one towards another. Even if you are single and say, I'm married to Messiah, then we must reflect the attributes of Yahushua Messiah, for he is the husband, the ultimate husband, and we collectively as the set-apart family of Yashar'al are his bride. And there are strong words that we must consider. If we say we believe the scriptures, let us prove so in our actions, in our words, in our deeds. Come with me to Romans 12, chapter 3 through 5, my brothers and sisters. Yes, I believe these are important as it relates to a marriage. It says, for I say through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, everyone. He didn't say just husband and wife. He said everyone, not to think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as the Almighty One has given to each a measure of belief. Each. He didn't say just the husband. He didn't say just the wife. It said, for as we have many members in one body, but all members do not have the same function, so we the many are one body in Messiah, and members each one of one another. My brothers and sisters, the day and time to refine our positions, how we should govern ourselves as a husband and wife, the day has come to assess, to witness. When they say judgment beginning at the house of Yahuwah first, and we're that house, where is it occurring with us? It is my position that we as husband, or you as a wife, sometimes forget or do not realize how much of what is written is designed for us to grow in set apartness across the board, as well as in marriage. I want to read Acts 20:28, my brothers and sisters. 20:28, for it reads, therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock among which the set apart Spirit has made you overseers to shepherd the assembly of the Almighty One, which he has purchased with his own blood. To shepherd, that he's purchased. It is he who should direct our footsteps and guide us and provide us with the wisdom to be wise husbands or wise wife or wise. Romans 3:21 through 27 reads this. My brother, my sister, hear these words. But now, apart from the Torah, that's saying the instruction, a righteousness of the Almighty One has been revealed. You can tell I don't have, if I ain't looking at it carefully and I'm going too fast. Let me read it. But now, apart from the instruction, the Torah, a righteousness of the Almighty One has been revealed, being witnessed by the Torah and the prophets. And the righteousness of the Almighty One is through belief in Yahushua Messiah to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference. For all have sinned and fall short of the esteem of the Almighty One, being declared right without pain by his favor through the redemption which is in Messiah Yahusha. Now hear these words, whom the Almighty One set forth as an atonement through belief in his blood to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his tolerance, the Almighty One had passed over the sins that had taken place before, to demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, that he is righteous and declares righteous the one who has belief in Yahusha. Where then is the boasting? It is shut out. But what Torah? Of what works? No, but by the Torah of belief. Belief. Living instructions, the life in the scriptures, is a result of belief, what we don't see. We see scriptures, we see many different translations, we see where man has changed some scriptures around and played with the words and infiltrated the scripture with words that are not acceptable. But though man has tampered with the text, they cannot tamper with the Almighty Father's Spirit. For it is the Spirit of Yahuah that makes alive. Now they may falsely accuse things that are of the Almighty Father, but they cannot change him. And the power and might of his set-apart instructions will grow stronger among us as we prepare for this final exodus, as we prepare for these last days, my brothers and sisters. Time will prove there are no rewind buttons. Time will also prove in seeking forgiveness under the blood of the Lamb that we are renewed and we press on, not keep throwing back what happened in the past. The past, sure, can be a schoolmaster, a teacher, a tutor. But living on the past and looking at it to bring ill emotions and ill regards to one another is wrong. There's so much to learn and so much to do going forward in this set-apart life. Believe it or not, when Yahusha said, I'll give you everlasting life, this water I give you is everlasting water, there's so much to learn, so much to do, my brothers and sisters. When we begin to recognize that the stream of set-apart words coming from the Almighty Father is immense, we'll begin to leave some of these petty arguments, thoughts, disagreements to the side. Let us choose our position wisely. Let us not be afraid to come away from wicked teachings and practices. And know this, that the Almighty Father will bring unity to those who will be gathered in these final days, to those who will be strengthened to demonstrate messages that are necessary to bring understanding, comfort, knowledge, and wisdom to those who are without. End times will prove, my brothers and sisters, it will prove that there are no rewind buttons, but it would also prove the presence of the Almighty Father. What say you? Yashar'al. Let me also, as I gradually come to an end, I want to bring your attention to these words. For husbands and wives should be the first to discern and understand these words. Why? In order to have a marriage with a strong foundation, we must understand the dynamics of discerning what these words are saying. Iron is sharpened by iron, and a man sharpens the face of his friend. Is your husband your first friend? Is your wife your first friend? How many of us ask, what does iron sharpen iron resemble? Notice it didn't say iron sharpen aluminum, or iron sharpen tin, or iron sharpening glass. This specifically say iron is sharpened by iron. That's of like mind. And that like mind should be to do the will of the Almighty Father. And in pursuing the will of the Almighty Father, if you ever look at iron sharpening iron, sparks fly, for the impurities, the weak portions of that iron flies off. And it yields a keen, sharp, refined product. So yes, my brothers and sisters, there'll be times in iron sharpening iron, the wife and the husband will be sharpening one another and demonstrating to others how it should be. Galatians 6:1-2 says this, my brothers and sisters. Brothers, if a man is overtaken in some trespass, you the spiritual ones, set such a one straight in a spirit of meekness, looking at yourself, lest you be tried too. Bear one another's burden, and so complete the Torah of Messiah. Do so, my brothers and sisters, by yielding to his spirit, understanding what he is saying to us as we interact as husband and wife. My prayer, O Yashar'al, is that this sheds some light, and contributes to the relationship of husband, wife, or husband with his wives. That this contributes some life. Now those, again, I want to say this, those who are against polygyny, don't put your conviction on others. Those who believe that you shouldn't marry and just give all your attention for such an hour as this to Yahusha, don't put your conviction on those that are married. And those that are married with one wife, don't put your conviction on those who have multiple wives. Remember, to say we believe in set apartness, to say we believe the scriptures, it is wicked to twist the scriptures to fit your conviction. Understand what your conviction is and walk in that conviction, my brothers and sisters. Don't twist the scriptures. Don't toss scriptures. Don't say, well, it means this. Though people do that because they're using their own comprehension skills, their own literacy skills. And oftentimes that reading and understanding is influenced about how you were educated. And oftentimes programmed, especially in this Western culture. So Yashar'al, rise up. Rise up and know what it takes to be bound together in unity, for we will witness as the final Exodus begin to take shape to the degree that it is obvious that Yashar'al will be gathered together. Soon and very soon, we will see an emergence of 144,000 Hebrews, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Yashar'al, as mentioned in Revelation 7 chapter. And Manasseh took the place of Dan because Dan went off to idol worship and is no longer mentioned. And Manasseh rose up, fulfilling a prophecy that his grandfather, Yaakov, whose name was changed to Yashar'al, prophesied that Manasseh will have his time. And that time will be demonstrated as the tribe of Manasseh rises among the 144,000, 12,000. And believe it or not, Yashar'al, there are characteristics of each of the 12 tribes mentioned. They will rise up to fulfill what was prophesied, to complete, or should I say to move to completeness to all that is promised by the Almighty Father. Yashar'al, oh Yashar'al, stay tuned. There's so much work to do. There's so much to learn, my brother, my sister, my family. Do we believe in the scriptures? Let us discern the life in the scriptures. Let us discern what the Spirit of Yahuah have to say beyond man's tampering with all these different translations. And let us yield to what makes us one. Ask yourself the beliefs that you have regarding a husband, a wife, regarding this walk. Do they line up with the life in the word? Do they line up with the living Torah? Do they line up with the Ten Commandments, the laws, the statutes, the set-apart direction from the living Almighty Father Yahuah that comes to us in Yahusha's name, as written in John 14:26. Be encouraged, my brother, my sister, my family. My prayer is that each of us grow in discerning the living voice of the Almighty Father Yahuah that comes to us in his word's name, which is Yahusha. Saying Ruach or Ruach HaKadosh, Ruach means spirit. Ruach HaKadosh means set apart spirit. But throughout scripture, we are instructed to know the importance of the name, O Yashar'al. We were not directed to chase after languages. And I have stated, I have no problem with anyone want to learn history of different languages. Do not partake in the deception of making people think that you're learning the original tongue, because that's not happening. I don't have a problem with learning the history, but let us tell the truth. Be encouraged, Yashar'al. There's much work needed to bring us into the refinement necessary to fulfill that final exodus. And many of us will find it will happen sooner than later. I pray that you are in good health. I pray that you are encouraged. I pray that you are inspired. And anything that I say, if it is confirmed by the Spirit of the Almighty Father, if it takes its place under the banner of Isaiah 55:11 that speaks of Yahuwah's word not returning to him void, but it draws you closer, me closer, us closer, then I say all credit and esteem should be going, and should be to the Almighty Father Yahuwah in his word's name, Yahusha. I pray that in our obedience to him, we lift up Yahusha and we witness him draw all men to himself, as it is written in John 12:32. On that note, my brother, my sister, my family, continue to be encouraged. Get involved. Get connected. Ask questions. Begin true and sincere dialogue. Vet me. Examine me. Let us have that conversation with the heart to look at the scriptures in whole, not looking at scriptures in part. Enough said on this matter at this time. So I say to you, my brother, my sister, my family, consider subscribing, sharing, like. Pass these words on if they are indeed beneficial and you see life in them. Again, I want to conclude, and I'm going to just say this and stop. Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom.